I have to hit another button. Okay, so we're now recording, and we will be recording all the lectures except your present. Actually, we will be recording your presentations, but all the lectures this semester and in previous semesters will be on YouTube. Okay, so you will be, if you miss class, you can watch the YouTube video, which usually is posted within 24 hours. So you won't miss much so far as that goes. We have several people here. We have Steve Lyons. Wave your hand up there, Steve.
It's
Okay,
me.
Steve is one of the live lecturers. We have Jerry Hill. Jerry, you can wave your hand. Jerry's my administrative assistant. You'll be getting emails from her, okay, about announcements. And we have Stellar. We don't have Canvas, and that's another story that I don't want to get into. If there's no questions, I'm going to start explaining some of the things about the course. And I'm going to let Steve say some other things about the course in a little bit, about his part of the course. So I'm now hopefully sharing a screen, which is my intro to structural materials. And if I'm I guess I don't know if I'm clever enough to, so that fills most of the screen, okay. So this is the online version of structural materials, so far as that goes. And it's started online last spring. And it goes under 3 numbers. There's an undergraduate version, a graduate version in course 3, and a graduate version in course 2. I've been teaching some version of this course for 35 years, okay? Originally, for many years, it was a welding course, which was my specialty, where I got my tenure and things. And about a year and a half ago, Dr. Don Baskin, who, I don't know if Don's on, but Don had been working with Professor Chris Shue, who was head of our department a few years ago. And he sent Don to talk to me, and it turns out Don had a wonderful set of lectures on light weighting. And so the students enjoyed it. And so he's been doing it for the last few semesters. He's going to give 12 live Zoom lectures every Thursday for the next 12 weeks. And Steve Lyons, who is here, will be giving 12 lectures. He's been doing this every spring for about the last 6 or 7 years, I believe, okay? Steve can introduce himself, but he's a graduate of the Sloan School. I'll introduce people a little bit more. All lectures and recitations are videotaped, so you can follow along at any time. It's possible to take this entire course online without ever coming to a Zoom meeting, except to do your presentation, but we'll get to that. So I used to pass around a sign-in sheet, but I'm going to ask you if you're going to register for the course. Jerry has the list of 32 or 33 students who have contacted us, or the registrar gave us the names. But I've never appreciated how the registrar does this. I've been at MIT since 1968 when I came as a freshman, except for 3 years I've been somewhere else. And I can't believe how antiquated the whole registration system is at MIT. The faculty member doesn't really know who's in the class for about 3 or 4 weeks. And even that, the data is usually terrible, okay? So I have Jerry keep a list, and she will be sending you emails out through Stellar or other ways. Like I said, it became a fully online course because of COVID. The class schedule for myself this year will be Monday, Tuesday, and Friday for the days that we need, okay? I won't be doing it every day. I will do it this Friday. We'll talk about that. Steve Lyons will teach on Wednesday. Don Baskin will teach on Thursdays, if you choose to take their modules. And the students will do the presentations later in the term during my recitations. And typically we can do 3 student presentations in an hour. We'll get to that. One of the themes of the course is flexibility in a stress-free environment. A few years ago, about 25 years ago, I decided that the way we teach is worthless. It's all we do is train students to take exams. And that's not learning. And so I decided to try to focus more on the learning aspect. And MIT is always talking about, oh, let's reduce the stress on the students. And then they come up with all these regulations that increase the stress, okay? So I decided to ignore the administration and just do things my own way. But we try to be flexible because the goal here is for you to learn, okay, something. And it turns out we learned some things too, okay, from your questions and your presentations. So it's a two-way street. And one of the reasons for doing a presentation is to give you another opportunity to teach other people about something that you're passionate about. Available modules, there's a bunch of them. If you go to this website on my classes, it will list them. For example, I taught a module on total quality management back in the spring of 2018. I've taught modules on materials selection and welding, metallurgy. Anyway, there's a host of them. This isn't even all of them, okay? But they've been videotaped. Actually, they've been videotaped for the last 30 years, but they've been on YouTube for the last 8 years or so. And by the way, there's no restriction on the YouTube. Last I knew, 3 or 4 years ago, 33,000 people had taken my welding metallurgy thing around the world. I didn't know there were 33,000 people who would want to take a welding metallurgy course, but I guess. Dr. Simone Belmar, who will not be participating, he's off busy starting his own company for the last 7 years. He has taught in some other years, but he won't be teaching this semester. He is a materials engineer with a mechanical engineering background. He got his PhD at MIT, and he has taught a number of modules over the years, and the students have generally appreciated what he's done. Another person is Dr. Neil Jenkins. Neil was one of my students. He was an MIT freshman, went all the way through with his PhD in welding fume, working at Harvard School of Public Health. He then went on to get an MD. And it's a long story, but the last time I was on sabbatical, he actually volunteered to teach a module on NDE of the human body. Basically, if you go visit the doctor, what does he do? What are the sensors that he uses to figure out what ails you? And it turns out you already know the 5 senses: sight, touch, hearing. What are the 5 senses? I learned them in elementary school. Smell, and I said hearing, sound. But anyway, there are 5 senses, and that's what the doctor uses. For example, garlic breath with other ailments is a sign of a certain type of disease. It also is a sign of bad breath from not brushing your teeth and whatnot. But anyway, Steve Lyons has, since about 2015, has been teaching in the spring term law and technology. And Steve, do you want to take a second, and I'll take the screen off and turn it over. You can tell them a little bit about your module since you're here.
You mean try to answer the question why they're being forced to listen to some lawyer in downtown Boston when they really signed up for a material science course? Sure, I'm happy to explain that, or at least attempt to explain it. Good morning. My name is Steve Lyons. As Professor Eager has said, I've taught a module of this section for the last 5 or 6 years. I've been teaching here at MIT for now, I think this is my 16th year, but I don't really care to count anymore. I went to the Sloan School, but after that, I decided I didn't want to turn out like my fellow students, and I decided I was going to go to law school instead. So I went to law school and have for the past 34 years practiced law, well, really all over the country, all over the world. I specialize in litigation. I get back to the original question, which is why are you being forced to listen to some trial lawyer from his offices in downtown Boston if you signed up for a materials science course? And that is because we teach you at MIT to be the best scientists, the best researchers, the best writers, and at the Sloan School, hopefully to be the best entrepreneurs. But we never teach you how to protect the product of your creativity, whether it happens to be code that you write for a computer to design an algorithm that does trading faster on Wall Street than anybody else, or whether it happens to be some new compound in material science that you develop. And these are examples actually that I'm giving of students that have that we've actually dealt with. What we don't teach you to do is teach you how to protect the product of your creativity. And it's if I can use an analogy, it's like teaching someone in law school, giving them a degree, but not telling them where the courthouse is. And we find that whether it happens to be research that you're doing as a student, or later on when you start your own companies, when you do a startup, one of the practical things that you need to know about is how to protect your intellectual property, if for no other reason than to prevent you from being taken advantage of. As Tom can tell you, we have case after case after case that he and I have come across where students have been taken advantage of and have lost control of their intellectual property, either because of some regulation that they overlooked while doing research at MIT. As I mentioned, entrepreneurs engaged in a startup someplace. So, Tom and I identified this gap in the curriculum at MIT, and we hope to fill it with this particular course. We want to teach you a little something about intellectual property, whether it happens to be with patents, copyrights, or trademarks, and teach you how to protect those things that you create while you're a student or afterwards. And that's what the course is designed to do, to give you a working knowledge and to armor you with the knowledge that you need to protect your intellectual property. That's in a nutshell what I have to offer. And what we'll do is we'll have a running discussion during the 12 weeks of the module where I'll be discussing examples of students who have gone through things that we want to have you folks avoid. Hopefully we'll develop a dialogue and customize the course in such a way as to focus on the things that are of particular interest to each and every one of you.
Oh, okay, thanks, Steve. And let me say, you're not forced to take Steve's module. There are 24 lectures that are given live on Zoom this semester, but you actually have to watch 36. If you go and look and see how many hours of lectures have already been archived, there's about 150 hours. And so I've had students, it says you can take this course uh, multiple times. I had one undergraduate take it 3 times. 10% of their undergraduate education was this course. You have to take different modules each time, but the modules are varied. Okay, Steve teaches intellectual property. Why? Why in the structural materials course? Well, the major reason is Steve is not just some attorney from downtown Boston. Steve is an MIT graduate. He's taught at MIT for years. He's interested in the students, and he's actually fairly qualified. He's in a law firm called Kleinman and Lyons. His name is on the door, or the nameplate of the company. And in fact, in the 5-6 years that we've been working together, I know he's argued cases between in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on at least 2 occasions in those 5 years. And I think he had already argued before the Supreme Court before that. There's not all that many attorneys who are at a stature level that have argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. And you can ask Steve what he thinks of the U.S. Supreme Court, and he'll be frank. We may have to take the recording off, okay? But he will tell you what he thinks. I've heard him answer those questions for students in class. So you're talking about someone who has some real practical knowledge. And the same thing, let me say something about Don Baskin, okay? Don was got his degree in PhD in material science from Northwestern. Let me go back to the beginning up here. And he actually has a company called Spectrum Materials Engineering, but he went to work for Chrysler. And then Chrysler got bought out by Mercedes-Benz, and now he went to, they sent him to Germany, working for Mercedes in the design group. And he had been working at Chrysler Tech Center. Then after about 10 years in Germany, he went back to Chrysler Tech Center, working there. And finally, he came back to MIT to work for a startup at MIT. And he's got his own consulting business now. Don's specialty at Mercedes Chrysler, or whatever it's called, Daimler Chrysler, was design of lightweight structural materials, structural systems. And he uses both automobiles and bicycles in his lectures as examples of how do you really design a product using both materials and the geometry to get the lightest weight structure. And the students have enjoyed it. He's enjoyed it. He knows what he's doing. He pioneered some of or he worked with teams, let me say, who pioneered some of the techniques that are cutting edge in the automobile design business today. So there are a bunch of different modules. I went through some. You can look on the web. You need to decide if you're going to take the course, hopefully over the next week, which modules you want to take. I will say about half the students take at least one, if not both, of the live modules, the 24 lectures. Part of that reason was, well, you got the question and answer, give and take, but also they enjoyed it. They liked the interaction, more common interaction. And I used to lecture too. Sometimes we'd have 36 live lectures some semesters. But I found, particularly with COVID, I have to take care of the student presentations and other things. And I got over 100 hours of Tom Eager talking on the web. So here's one of the requirements. You got to watch 36 lectures, live or by video. Many of them are 6 lectures each. We used to do 12 lectures each, but we found the students like smaller sound bites of lectures. Some are still double modules just because they were the way they were developed. So some of them are 12 lectures, some of them are 6 lectures. You've got to pick 36. You've got to prepare a 1-page outline of it. It says 1-page outline of each lecture module. By 1-page outline, I should change that. It's 1 or 2 lines describing the 2 or 3 themes of that lecture. So for the whole course of 36 lectures, you only need about 3 pages of notes. When you listen to a 1-hour presentation live on Zoom or by YouTube from an archived lecture, take 2 minutes at the end and say, what were they trying to teach? Can I do the elevator talk, a sound bite of 1 or 2 lines and just kind of bullet points of what were the themes? I learned as an undergraduate that, and it was a watershed part of my undergraduate career, that all the stuff they teach you at MIT, most of it's fluff. They call it enhancement or enrichment material. But in fact, they only have 2 or 3 ideas to trying to get across in a lecture. And that's all you can get across in a lecture. Seriously, I've been teaching for a while. You can't, if you try to get 12 things in a lecture, 4 minutes on each topic, it's too superficial. You can only get 2 or 3 ideas across. So you should write down, and you should always do this, okay? Whenever you go to a meeting at work, you should walk out of that meeting and say, well, what did we accomplish? One of the things I learned in doing this, I'd walk out of meetings and say, we accomplished nothing, okay? And that's an important thing to learn, that a lot of meetings are wasted time. And that will help you when you're managing a meeting to do a better job. You've got to prepare a 10-minute presentation, or we could do a 10-page paper, but we only have about 30 students. I can probably try to make most of you do a presentation. If someone really can't do a presentation, you can do a 10-page paper. But it's on a topic of your choice. I say a materials topic. It can be on an intellectual property topic if you want. Anything you want that's of interest to you. This is your chance to teach some of your fellow students something that you care about. It can be how to cook pizza. I don't care. If that's something that you have some particular knowledge of or have practiced, but we want you to attend or critique at least 6 other student presentations. And if we videotape them, we're not going to put them on YouTube. There'll be limited access, but you're going to have to let me know which other students you critique. And by critique, you need to send that critique to the other student. Hopefully it'll be done in a spirit of trying to help and encourage them and let them know how to improve their teaching. And one of the things I'd like you to do, I used to hand out hundreds of pages of supplemental materials. This is mostly when I taught some welding. But now I found that it's easy to explore topics and people of interest. If something comes up when you're listening to a lecture, all you have to do is Google it or Yahoo it or whatever you want to do and do a little research on it. So people say, well, where's the outside work? What's the reading you're supposed to do? I'll give you some of that, but mostly I want you to learn how to explore things yourself. Find out what other things are out there and teach yourself how to become an expert. I found that I can develop a fair amount of expertise in something with 2 hours worth of study of the topic. 10 pages or 10 minutes for presentation. You should reference your sources, attend and comment on at least 6 other student presentations. Oops, let me back. I went to from the summer of 2020. These are some of the topics. Metal brushes, which are part of motors. The student had worked in a company and they were developing a new type of metal brush. So he gave a presentation about something he knew about. iPhone glass. I think this person was just interested in the glass that goes into an iPhone, but also into a computer. okay, the computer screens. Corning is one of the world's premier glass companies located in Corning, New York. They became an expert in making fluorescent light bulbs. They could make them faster and cheaper than anybody else. Then they saw that market dying, and so they went into the old cathode ray tube television tubes. Just a big glass bulb, okay, but different requirements. And then they saw that dying, and so they went into very thin glass, a very high strength, not toughness, but very high strength to make computer screens. And then the cell phones came along, and now you needed something very impact resistant, or relatively impact resistant, very thin, very lightweight. And how do you do that? I actually have a module talking about what we do with, or part of a module, how do we make high strength glass? And it's actually a very interesting story, the different approaches of how to make a brittle material usable. So these are some of the things. Fiber optic cables, that actually was a Corning perfected technology. One person did the collapse of the World Trade Center. Another one did sailboat keel failures. People did various topics. Your presentation is best if it's on a topic of your own interest. So I'm not going to tell you what the topic has to be. You've got to figure it out for yourself. And it gives you an opportunity to teach others about something that's of interest to you. And if you don't have a topic already, well, pick a topic of something you're interested in learning about. Teach yourself and then teach someone else. 10 minutes, don't be too general, don't be too broad. Some students, well, I'm going to talk about materials in automobiles. Excuse me? You're going to do that in 10 minutes? I think that'll be superficial. If you want to talk about rubber for tires for off-road vehicles, that's fairly specific, okay? I'm not sure exactly where you're going to find that information, but there's probably something out there. Don't try to cover too much, okay? And we want, at the end of your presentation, the last slide or two, we want to know what you think. Sometimes you're going to be evaluating what other people think, and we want to know if you think they're right or wrong. A lot of people will probably tell you that most of these, since this is a class that doesn't have quizzes and things, it's easy to get an A. Well, let me tell you, it is possible to get a B in this class. It's also possible to flunk it by not doing anything, and not dropping it in time. I have given Fs because of that, and I have given Bs. And the people who got a B were the ones who didn't listen to the lectures. We're trying to teach you to be critical in your thinking. Just because you read it on the front page of the Wall Street Journal doesn't mean it's true. Okay, what was, there was something recently that, I mean, I run across these things all the time, but a couple of days ago, someone was telling me about something. I said, really? Did they say that? For example, a lot of you think that going to Mars is a wonderful idea. Well, you will learn in this class that it still costs $20,000 a pound to put something in orbit, to get it beyond space, gravity of Earth. And at $20,000 a pound, how many people do you think we're going to send to Mars? Because it's a 3-year journey, and those people have to eat. Sure, you can send some robot to Mars. We just did that. I think it was the Japanese or the Saudi Arabians or whatever. I can't remember. Abu Dhabi's. They're all getting into this. Let's go to Mars.
Big landing on Thursday, Tom. 3:55.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll have to put that on my schedule. Okay, thanks. But I mean, it's a hoax. You know, Elon Musk says he'd like to die on Mars, but not on landing. I think we ought to send him. Anyway, So the grading for this course, no quizzes, no finals, yay. You got 3 requirements. Submission of a proposed topic by a week from Friday. You've got to email me and tell me what your proposed topic is. I am not looking for a 3-page proposal on a 10-minute presentation. I'm looking for 2 or 3 lines. And if you send me something like I'm going to analyze all the materials used in automobiles, I'm going to say that's not acceptable. That's too general. Get more specific. If you tell me you're going to do something that I've never heard of, that's fine. I'm trying to learn things too. But I say half-page max. It's not just, you can send me an email, okay? No issue with collusion with others. I'm supposed to tell you that. It's part of the requirements of MIT. If there's no quizzes, and I encourage you to talk to your classmates. That's the real world. You're going to be evaluated. I'm supposed to tell you what you're going to be on your presentation and participation in class. Your presentations are going to be due by the end of April. We will start doing them. If people are ready in 2 weeks, you've already got a presentation that you did at your last company, or you want to talk about your thesis proposal, and you can pare it down to 10 minutes. This is what I'm going to do for my thesis, or this is a project we worked on at my last company. You may already have it in the bag. You just have to prepare it so you can do it in 10 minutes. That means 10 PowerPoint slides max, okay? And then you have to do this kind of outlines of the 36 modules, which is only going to be about 3 or 4 pages. And you've got to attend about half a dozen other student presentations. Many students say they've learned a lot from other students' presentations. And let me stop for a second and see if you've got any questions at this point. Any questions? No? Okay, well, let me go back to my teaching philosophy and how we got to where we are right now. Or how I got to where I am. And you, pardon me?
I actually have a quick question.
Yep.
How do we let you know which modules we want to attend? Should we just email, or is there a deadline? Or
it's really up to you. There's no deadline. I expect you to turn in something on 36 modules. I think if you're going to attend the 24 live lectures of Steve Lyons and Don Baskin, it's probably good to start on one of those modules early, but it's going to take you part of the week just to see what all the options are. You've got a smorgasbord out there of options. And if you want to email me, we have a private one-on-one discussion about what you're interested in. Some students take this class, believe it or not, to learn about structural materials. And you actually can. There are modules from Simone Belmar and myself talking about structural materials. You could take this course 3 times on structural materials. But we also have things on total quality management. We have things on intellectual property. We have actual real design of structural materials. We don't really cover functional materials because MIT does that pretty well. You want to learn about nanomaterials, go somewhere else. We've got a module on additive manufacturing. And I'll warn you that I did that 6-unit module because I was getting tired of students coming to me and telling me that the world was going to be taken over by additive manufacturing. That's another fraud, like going to Mars, colonizing Mars. It's not going to happen in our lifetimes, folks. And it probably will never happen. Anybody want to know the reason why? Anyone can guess the reason why additive manufacturing is not the great panacea for manufacturing? I'll give you one. Just like it takes $20,000 to put 1 pound in orbit to go to Mars, that's sort of a showstopper. Well, the showstopper with additive manufacturing right now is the cost of a metal additive manufactured part is about $10,000 a pound. They got a few orders of magnitude to bring the costs down to compete with the things that we've been doing for years. Additive manufacturing has niche markets, but it's a niche market thing. Just like going to Mars is sort of a niche for the 10 people who are going to do it. How many people have we put on the moon and now we're going to colonize Mars? You need to be a little bit critical when you listen to all these things. Back when I was your age, one of the big things, there was a guy going around saying they were going to do magnetic levitation of trains. Well, you know, one of the problems with that is you have to build the train tracks out of aluminum. That's the way the magnetic levitation works. You could take all the aluminum made in the world and you'd only be able to build one train track from Boston to New York. And we're going to build train tracks all over the world? In how many centuries are we going to do this, folks? So magnetic levitation is another promise. It's another hollow promise, okay? But, you know, people get a lot of press out of these things. Other questions? So how did I get here where I don't believe in the educational? Too much of our educational approach is geared to preparing students to take tests rather than learning. I learned this one morning. I've got 7 children. This was 30 years ago. I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, eat breakfast before and leave the house, go to work before anyone in the house was awake. And I was having a bowl of cereal at the kitchen table, and one of the children had left their high school math book on the table. And so the paper hadn't come that morning. So I decided to look in their math book, and every topic in that math book had 2 pages on it. 2 pages on differentials, 2 pages on integrals, 2 pages on factorials, 2 pages on exponentials, I had no idea that mathematics was quantized, that every topic could be taught in 2 pages. And as I'm sitting there thinking about this, I thought, why are they doing that? And then I realized all they were doing is prepping these students to take the SAT exam. It had nothing to do about teaching the math. It had everything to do with their passing a quiz and making the high school and the teachers and the student all look good on this artificial exam. And as I thought about that, I thought, well, you know, we do the same thing at MIT. But the problem is it's even worse at MIT. MIT students would not be at MIT if they didn't know how to take tests. You already know how to take tests. I don't have to prove to you, and you don't have to prove to me that you can do well on a test. And I could start doing this because this subject is not required for anyone, except during the summer, U.S. Navy officers who come here in course 2N. But everyone else, you're just taking it because you want to. And I think it's actually sort of interesting that it's the second largest course in material science after 3091. It's got more students than all the mainstream graduate subjects, and it's a purely elective, okay? Well, I think that's significant. I think that's what I should be doing. Most of my colleagues don't, but anyway, let's see. Good teaching makes things simple rather than complex. That's something that I think all the lecturers in this course will do. A lot of other courses, the professor is trying to teach you how complex something is, okay? Rather than to show you how it really is simple. And in fact, I try to tell you what you already know and how to put it together to reach a conclusion. I believe you already got the tools necessary to learn on your own, but very few people actually show you how. And induction, deduction, extrapolation, and estimation are methods that serve you well throughout your life. This is something someone sent to me about a month ago. I'd never seen it. Experts have a special talent for complicating things. But the standout genius in any field is always the person who is able to take what is incredibly complex, break it down to what is essential, and present it in a way that makes it seem simple. Okay. So we have Don Baskin, and we've talked a little bit about that already. Fundamental methodologies and tools. We have Steve Lyons, and he's already talked a little bit about that. This whole outline is on Stellar. And so you can look at it. We sent it to you before. Does anybody have any questions? If not, I'm going to take a couple of minutes and tell you what some other students have said about this class. So we got a new department head. Pardon me? Go ahead.
Sorry. Could you clarify when, I guess, are we supposed to submit all of our notes for the modules that we watched together? So turn in.
Yeah, I think I had that on the list of A, B, C in red.
Yeah.
So dates in blue.
Yeah.
And I think it's like early May.
Okay, so we can submit those all at one time, like.
Yeah, I don't want to see them all piecemeal. Okay.
Okay, great.
Frankly, I don't care what you write. And the thing that's been amazing to me for the 4 or 5 years we've been doing this, 2 students can watch the same set of 6 lectures, and you read what the themes were from those 2 students, you wouldn't believe they watched the same lectures. And the reason is you learn based on your prior experience. You are a product of your upbringing, okay? And what's important in a lecture to you may not even be important at all to someone else. And so those little modules tell me what your themes are. Well, one thing it does is you actually have to watch 36 lectures in order to write something, themes up. So I do look at some of these things. But I don't care. You're not writing them for me. You're writing them for yourself. I'm trying to get you to develop the technique of always analyzing. When you walk out of something that took a half an hour or an hour of your life, ask yourself, was it worth it? Did it add any value? If I'm in charge next time, is this the way I would do it? I'll tell you a story, since that's one of the things I do is I tell stories. And all of us tell stories that lecture in this course. We kind of learned, the students, I think the students learn better from stories. They learn at their own speed. It's basically the parable method, okay? But now I got to remember what my story, when I was a department head and serving on engineering council, one of the ways someone would try to do sort of a pocket veto and get something off the table, they would propose, well, let's do a survey. We'll send a survey around to all the people in the School of Engineering and find out what they think. And on the face of it, it sounds like a pretty good idea. And I used to pipe up, raise my hand and say, well, wait a second. Before we go out and do all this work and commandeer, commission a survey, let me ask you, if you had the information with you today, what would you do with it? And they could never answer what they were going to do with it, because their whole purpose in proposing the survey was they were uncomfortable with the topic and they wanted to get it off the table. That's what they were trying to do. And when faced with the reality that they didn't even know what they were going to do with the survey, it's sort of, and I don't want to bring up politics here, but I will. It's sort of like impeaching the president. We knew he was not going to get impeached. But some people felt it was important to go through the process. Other people thought it was a waste of time, okay? I'm sure you have your own opinion, okay? But those little themes are actually, getting back to your question, are actually my way of helping you start to organize your thoughts in little modules of your time. Think whether what you've been asked to do is value added to the world or to your world. And you're going to find, I often say, half of what we do, we don't really need to do. The problem is knowing which half is the unimportant half and which half is the important half, okay? But I found that doing this little analysis of what did I get out of what we just did to be very useful. Okay. Does that answer the question? Yes, no? Okay. Okay, the best and worst. So this is a short thing I put together because we were getting a new department head a year ago. And I updated a little bit. Because many people, well, I'd say most of the faculty in my department look down on the way I teach. Okay, it's sort of unorthodox. But I got tenure, I can do what I want. The best is, you can read some of these. These are real student evaluations, okay? Best class at MIT. These are nice, pleasant evaluations. Probably one of the most useful classes. I gained a lot of knowledge I can use in my professional career, blah, blah, blah. The worst, frankly, this is the only really bad evaluation I had over 4 years. Eager is the worst part of the class and spent a lot of time in lectures discussing how to be lazy, blah, blah, blah. You can read it. He obviously didn't like the class. There's something called outcomes assessment. You talk to someone who's been out away from MIT for 5 or 10 years and say, what was the most valuable thing you had at MIT? Well, here's one I got out of the blue from a captain in the US Navy who had been in my class in 2004. This 15 years later. I learned more and was entertained more in your class than all my other grad classes combined. I thought that was pretty. And I wrote him back. I said, did you really mean that? He said, yeah. Your practical knowledge is what we all took away. That's what a lot of the students are going to say about this class. You got Steve Lyons. He knows about intellectual property. He argues in front of the Supreme Court on intellectual property. Okay, he's got the qualifications. I have a fair amount of knowledge in structural materials, as does Don Baskin and other people that have lectured, okay? And here's another outcomes assessment. A lot of my stuff is welding. This is from a guy he calls himself an educated welder, and he teaches welding to other welders, but at kind of the tech school level, not at the college level. But he says that the best, my lectures on YouTube are the best resource he's found to date. And he's been teaching for 10 years or whatever, other welders. I think those are pretty good assessments overall, except for the one who hated me. And that may be a fair assessment too, who knows? I've also sent you all the evaluations over 4 years. This is all the comments. I won't put them up on the screen. But I sent that to you. I encourage you to read it, okay? Because there are some things that the students said in there. The students actually are sometimes pretty perceptive. One of my favorite evaluations of all time was one student said they used to watch my lectures while they fixed dinner, okay? So because you're not being quizzed on it, you can be riding your Peloton bike. You can do whatever you want, okay? During class, we let you eat during class. In fact, Steve, when we had real live lectures on Fridays, would bring in what's the bakery? Flour. He'd bring in flour, okay, and you'd be able to sit there and pig out during lecture. Okay.
Nothing too good for my students.
That's right. Well, that's right. Nothing like calories to help. Steve also teaches. He's a fitness guru, and he likes bikes. Okay, he goes mountain biking in Europe. Okay. Okay. Any questions? There are some other things I sent you. But what are you have any questions? We only got 1 minute left. So tomorrow you have a lecture from Steve. He sent around an invitation. It should be on Stellar. It'll be a different Zoom number because different people will record, okay? And Don Baskin will have another Zoom number. And I will send around an invitation. Jerry's going to be busy sending out invitations. And we may not have class next Monday and Tuesday. But Wednesday and Thursday we will. That will be Steve and Don. And maybe we'll start up again on Friday. If you've got enough questions this Friday, if you don't have questions this Friday, I will give a presentation that I did when a student asked a question of me last spring. And I have a whole presentation answering that question. It has to do with structural materials. I can fill up the time. I got lots of stories. One of my postdocs went through 5 years of my lectures and found that I had taught 4 years of my lectures, and he cataloged that I taught. He actually cataloged a little synopsis on each story. He listed 559 stories that I had told in 4 years. You'll find some students complain, oh, I heard that story in another lecture. Well, not every story is unique, okay? I've heard some of Steve's stories more than once. Okay, if there's no other questions. Oh, yes.
Just want to know, like, I know like some videos on EDX. Is it like overlap with the video that you share on the YouTube?
No, well, they were, EDX wanted six lectures, so I did 6 lectures focusing on people in industry. If you wanted to do those EDX 6 lectures as a module, you could, okay? But you're going to find some overlap with the ones that already exist in this course. I mean, I didn't create everything new. I'm not that bright, okay? I recycle some material. I write on the back of used copy paper, okay? Other questions? But yes, there are modules there. There are also some things on my website. I gave a series of lectures on welding to the American Welding Society, kind of an old age guy honor thing they did for me. And I got like 100 slides on the history of welding. If you're really interested in welding and you want to put yourself to sleep one night, this is the thing. It's on my website. Okay. So there's lots of things. I just decided after a while, let's just videotape whatever I do and my grandchildren can watch it. Okay. So that's it. We're over time. Thanks. See you tomorrow if you want to come.
Thank you.